My name's Jacob Shea. I'm the, project lead for Meta Money Market. That's my just contact information. So a little bit about me. So my background's in synthetic biology. The company I did before this, we did a automated platform for discovering phage, which are these little tiny viruses. They look like this, that kill bacteria. And so what got me really excited about Ethereum was the fact that kind of how this consensus of different nodes communicate is pretty similar to how cells communicate. And then 0x was kind of my gateway drug into kind of market making. So I started out market making just to kind of learn a little bit more about it. And then no one really was market making, so then we just kind of it got a little out of hand. And then we went up the stack to trying to figure out how to get more people taking markets or get interested. And then we landed on Meta Money Market. So let me see if there's a trigger. No, I guess I can stay. Is there a trigger? No? Okay. So let me get out of the way a bit. So this is Meta Money Market. At its basic core, it's just a system of adapters, and then on top of those adapters, we build a contract which kind of tokenizes the rebalancing between those adapters. And so the big reason that we did this to start was just we had Compound and we had DYDX, and we were trying to decide between the two. And rather than decide between the two, we just did both. And so it does kind of create a lot of cool properties, mainly that it creates this one giant big market, which is easier to program with, and it's more representative. So the adapters themselves are pretty simple. They're just mainly if we can write something where you get a rate, deposit, withdraw, and then get supply, then we can adapt it into the system. And then the really exciting thing is kind of this whole rebalancing. We call it rebalancing, but it's mostly just reallocating. And so with the max interest token, which is the one that exists right now, where it's rebalancing between Compound, DYDX, and very soon BZX, all it's really doing is solving for whenever a rebalance is likely to be profitable. And so the general case of that is just you're writing a function and then submitting some sort of kind of discrete solution for that. So with, here you can kind of see. So with the max interest rate token, sorry, this is kind of, there. So you can see, so if you had money in Compound, or if you had money in DYDX, and this is with $1 million, it would take this 6% difference to basically exist for more than a minute in order to make money. And so if you only had $1,000, you can tell that it'd probably take well, I know it takes about a day difference with this pretty huge difference. So it's pretty unprofitable to do any sort of rebalancing if you have less than $1 million. So that's kind of the main use case that we wanted to solve for. And so we have a solution for that, and solving this function off-chain is relatively straightforward. Putting it on-chain is a little bit more difficult because you have to come up with a single numerical solution for it. But the cool thing about all of this is this also works for things that are not strictly optimizing for, so this one is optimizing for getting the most amount of value, but you could also write, how to explain? You could write functions to where anyone can kind of put solutions for them. And then if those solutions are valid for the function that you write, it just executes. So this could be any sort of profitable like transaction, not just rebalancing. And so this is just kind of the results of the how it works in the real world. So this was from July, just running Compound DYDX with a $1,000 deposit. I don't know if y'all can see this, but Compound got $9.15. DYDX got $9.02. Meta Money Market got $10.36. So this is cool. And then this is just kind of explaining why this happens, that you can get more money from combining two things that are essentially getting the same amount. And so what I wanted to talk about, and we can go back and forth, and y'all can tell me your ideas too, is this concept of building your own bank. It's also maybe concept of building like your own money market, depending on how you define a bank. But you can basically pick kind of the adapters that you want to use. So like these are the three that we picked. And then these is what exists right now at metamoneymarket.com. But you can really pick any protocol with a yield. So even things with negative yield or potentially negative yield like Uniswap. And then you can pick a rebalancing method. So right now we're doing manual just because it's easier to do the math off chain. But you could do manual and then have like a verification contract so that like you can only do certain things within a bounds. You can do an Oracle-based smart contract, or you can do the 100% on-chain, which is the really cool stuff. The controller itself, so what is actually moving money between? So right now that's a custom contract, which is Meta Money Market. But you could also do things like plug all of this into Melon so that you can have a kind of a Melon managed money market. So your Melon funds could have some sort of optimized yield. You could also plug it into Aragon DAOs, so you can have DAO managed money markets. And then the ledger right now it's optimized for kind of using this token shares. So like having everything kind of be pooled. But if you were like a DAO or something, or if it was just yourself, you would probably only want an account. And so these are just kind of some examples of things you could build. So like you can do a DAO governed cash management. So like say you're a DAO and your DAO had like a few million, you wouldn't want to just have it all sitting in DAI or sitting in Ether. You'd probably want to manage that, and you'd probably want to manage it with like Compound, fixed rates, and maybe you like Nuo, you can put it in Nuo. And then you can do things like expert managed liquidity providers. So with Uniswap, so this one would be kind of two tokens. So you'd have ETH, you'd have DAI, and then you'd just be rebalancing between MetaDAI / Meta Ether, and then Uniswap. And since it's expert managed, they would be able to kind of move it between the two as they saw fit. Or you could develop like a smart contract so that that function in that smart contract could kind of define whenever a price movement or movement between like out of the liquidity of Uniswap and into something more stable like MetaDAI occurs. And then this last one is just kind of, you can build your own proxy bank account with like a max rate, the risk-free rate, and then fixed rate, and then just pure DAI. And then this is just kind of an example of something you can do once you start adding things on top of it, or combining multiple money markets. So like you could take the risk-free, this concept of a risk-free token, which is just the max rate, but instead of having all of the rate go to yourself or to the pool, you could put 10% into an insurance pool, and then just with specific functions. Yeah. And then you can even have 10% going like out of the pool into like something external. Yeah. So that was a lot, probably a bit too fast. So does anyone have any questions?
Are you live yet with your product?
So we're live on mainnet with rebalancing between Compound and DYDX. We're about to add BZX pretty quickly. And then anyone can kind of take the contracts and deploy them themselves if you want to just run it yourself. Yeah.
What kind of user interviews or validation have you gone through to come to this model?
Sorry.
Oh, right. Yeah, so I'm curious to arrive at this product. What's the journey been like? What kind of early validation have you got?
So I guess, to actually build the product, it was really just something we needed. So we wanted it. So we're building a bank, and we needed kind of a LIBOR rate for other things that we want to build. And so we just kind of launched it as a thing that, like, there's no reason not to like open source it. So we did, and then people started putting way too much money into it. And so we just started to kind of decide to take it a little bit further and try to make it a bit more safer. Yeah.
Thanks for the presentation, Jess. How you get to the fixed rate and what kind of hedges you're doing, if say something?
So I don't know if I... Okay, so I don't go into it. So we did actually build a fixed rate, what was this weekend? Which was just so it was at ETH Boston. And all it does is kind of it's just a fixed interest rate swap. So you have like a bank, and that bank has money in kind of on a contract, and they're streaming rates. And then a depositor shows up, and then that depositor has, say they have 100 DAI. The contract or the CD contract will then choose which bank has the best rate at the moment, depending on their contract or depending on the deposit and the duration that they pick. And then say it's like 5% over a year, you then just kind of pull that 100 with that 5, and then all of it gets dropped into meta money market, so it's getting the variable rate over that entire period. And then at the end of it, or at the end of the duration, they'll redeem their ERC 721, and they'll get 105 DAI, and then you get the remainder. So it's just kind of paying $5 in order to get access to that variable rate.
What's your on-ramp? How you get on this?
So right now there is no on-ramp. The eventual on-ramp will just be a bank. So like a banking interface like Marcus or something like that.
Not MetaMask or anything?
So right now you use MetaMask if you go to metamoneymarket.com, and eventually all the other Web3 stuff.
Can you guys have like set tokens that you can just pick what you want so you can do everything automatically? Set it, forget it?
So not set. So set is more for things like buying and selling between multiple assets. So mostly we're just trying to focus on things where you're kind of just moving money around. So like depositing and withdrawing.
I was thinking more of the three different that you pulled up, fixed rate or whatever is it. To have that on there, we can just pick whatever, which three basket we want to use. So we don't have to, if you don't know how to develop, just make it easier to put the money in there.
Maybe.
When something, when something like this gets large enough, how do you expect rates across different providers? Like, will they converge to be like very, very tight? Or do you still think there'll be like enough incentive where you want to move frequently between them?
So there's enough incentive to do strategies like this in the real world, where rates are pretty tight. So there's just seeing how like Compound compares to DYDX and kind of their different kind of use cases. So like Compound seems to be a lot more long-term type trades, whereas DYDX is pretty speculative, like kind of all-in type trades. And then so like if this is Compound, DYDX is like this. So I don't think that's going to change too much over the time. It might lower a little bit. but you're always going to have some sort of like entropy in the system, so that at some asset under management, it's profitable to do it. It might not just be profitable like at kind of the lower end.
And what about people building competing systems? Will you guys be front running each other to try to go and optimize for the best yields, or can they work together? Like if someone built a similar system and they saw DYDX had the best rate for a small period of time, would you guys be all rushing in to take that from each other?
Yeah, that's why you can't really do the naive like approach of just like you see the best rate and then you're like always chasing that best rate. Because this is a great gift that I like of just like a bear in a grocery line and is constantly trying to like move to kind of like get into the faster line. So you kind of have to think. So if the both systems were naive, then yes, they would end up front running themselves. But hopefully, your calculation of like when a rebalance is profitable accounts for that. Because if it doesn't, you would just end up burning a ton of gas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cool. So anyone have any ideas of things they'd like to build? Yes.
So I just was interested in what you just said about accounting for what another competing platform might do, and it seems like that would have to be sort of dynamic. That is, if the competing platform doesn't exist now, then your calculation that you might perform currently wouldn't be valid in the future when that platform does exist. So I was just wondering sort of how you go about that, how you go about having this forward-looking estimation of when the rebalance will be profitable or not.
Yeah, so doing it off-chain like is relatively straightforward, relatively. Doing it on-chain, I mean, you would just have to update your contracts, like if it changed. Otherwise, you would probably just get taken advantage of very quickly.
Is it like a statistical model, or do you?
Yeah. So that's why it works really well off-chain. So like it's just the probabilities. So you're just doing a probabilistic model of like when it makes sense to rebalance, or when it's profitable to rebalance, which makes sense off-chain, but then on-chain it's.
I mean, it's too computationally intensive. But then who's responsible for the model?
So whoever deploys the token.
So currently you, but prospectively anyone could create their own model.
Yeah. So currently it's me for the one that exists at metamoneymarket.com. But anyone could deploy their own competing token, which hopefully then eventually someone will get like the best token.
Thanks.
Yeah, sure thing. So it is live. I would do a demo if I had internet. So right now it works for DAI, USDC, and 0x. Cool. I guess I can just talk about. Oh yeah. So this is the design of kind of what we're eventually going to build on top of MetaMoney Market, which is a bank, and it's just very simple interface with like ACHs into MetaMoney Market, and then you see your balance, and then over time your balance goes up, and then when you want your money, you take it out. So we're a huge fan of being like basically trying to build like the single most boring crypto company out there. So these are just some other ideas. Cool. And so I think I went too fast. Cool. So does anyone use, I guess, Compound or DYDX or any other things? Yeah. So I guess what do you like about it versus not like about it? Anybody? Simple? Yeah. And so
On the lending side.
on the lending side, yeah. And so one thing that I'm always curious about is, so do any of y'all account for, like, I guess, the risks associated with it? So, like, yeah.
What kind of risks?
Yeah. So mainly, like, smart contract risk, price risk, the underlying risk of DAI. Yeah. So I guess those are the big three. Or, and then also, like, lending risks. So, like, if price drops and they don't pay back their asset, you'll get a haircut. Because that was kind of the motivation with, like, this risk-free token. So a lot of people seem to be building on top of Compound. And, like, it's great because Compound has, I think the rates dropped a little bit now, but it's somewhere around like 10 or 12%. But it just seems like getting 12% with like a, I don't know, like 10% chance of it going to zero within the year seems risk-adjusted to be not a good investment. So that was kind of why we wanted to build this, so people could build on, I guess, a more solid ground to start building kind of more complex DeFi stuff. So I was just kind of curious, like I guess we do a poll. So who would prefer 10%? So 10% zero insurance, or let's say 3% 100% insurance. So who would be on the insurance side?
How do we evaluate the smart contract risk of the insurance?
So based on what you know about contract risk at the time, right now.
It just seems like the risks of all of the different failure scenarios you bring out are very, very hard to calculate, except implicitly by, like, what is the risk-free rate of return and what is the premium, and that this must be the risk. And I just feel like the same thing would be true for the insurance pool. So I'd feel like I'm not sure if I'm actually net insured or not from having paid the premium.
Yeah. So that was the.
You could plug the Nexus Mutual.
Yeah. So that was NXM, which, yeah. So, like, you could insure it against all these things, but then this could fail. And so it gets really complicated because you have to, like if you're constantly insuring things with smart contracts, like, it's just turtles on top, or elephants on top of elephants.
In your opinion, does it make sense to, I guess, protect your investment through the use of insurance protocols, or perhaps something else like futures, or perhaps even options to hedge price risk?
Yes. It's just a question of. So right now, I think if you were 100% like protected for like Compound or MetaDai, you'd probably be paying a negative interest rate, it seems like. So I think you just kind of try to protect from kind of the most likely scenarios.
You run a smart contract, right?
Yes.
So is it audited already?
No. So, I mean, it'll eventually be audited, but, like, as you can see, all of these things can occur if it is audited. And then, as many people have found out, like, you can get tons and tons of audits, and then someone, like, just will randomly find something that can crash the entire thing. So I'm pretty bearish on audits and pretty bullish on insuring everything. The problem is, doing any sort of insurance, you need, like, in order to do it decentralized and, like, have it fully insured, you need to be, unless you get creative, you have to be 100% backed. So you have 100% collateral to insure 100, and it just, yeah, it's pretty hard. Yeah. So, yes. So I'm going to have the.
when you plan to build the banking-like interface, I guess for mass market, will you abstract, like, will you try to hide the crypto parts of it? Or do you
Yes.
think you want people to know that the underlying, like, what exactly is going on? Or do
Yes,
you-
I'd
yeah.
hide everything. So gas accounts, like, I think it should just look like a normal bank. Like, I think it should probably even take 3 to 5 business days to like get the money. Because oddly enough, like if it doesn't, so I don't think crypto is worse than like banking. But the problem is like if your money just it shows up too fast and like it's a too different of an experience, it kind of seems scammy. So you have to kind of think about like all of those like weird things that like if it's too good, so like 10%. Like if you give people 10%, then they're like suspicious even, which they should be. But if you were to give people like 3%, whereas everyone else is giving like 2 point something, then they just think like, okay, this person is maybe doing things a little bit better.
Yes, I understand your American thinking on that, because that's what BlockFi does also to make sure it's 6% or Celsius 7% to do that. But it's such a new product. I mean, you do need to give some, cushion in between. I mean, I think that's the explanation you have to, where the risks are. There's besides Oracle and, smart contract and other issues that are in there that we're having right now. I mean, you do have to have some yield to that. If you're going down to 3%, then you can pretty much go to Goldman's, where they're doing it for 2%. Where you need to give them a little cushion that it's a new product and it still can fail. But just my humble opinion.
How would you? So what I was thinking. So there are obviously some similar companies trying to do similar stuff, especially on Argent. How would you describe that you are different to them? Because they're essentially also trying to become a bank by running a smart contract that basically plugs into several different DeFi protocols these days, and also provide the consumer a mechanism to exchange tokens or cryptocurrency. So where do you see, let's say, the incremental or long-term differentiator to an Argent, for example?
Yeah, so this would be something that Argent would plug into. So like instead of plugging into Compound, they'd plug into this. So that's the biggest differentiator. Then on like the UI side of things, there's just going to be a ton of competing banks.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it's really like you have or at least I think, you have like kind of the base protocols, which are like the base banking products, and then you have the user experience. So like you'll always have the client-facing aspect, because like when things fail, they're not going to just be like, oh, smart contract failed. No, they're going to go, they want someone to, I guess, yell at or blame if things fail. So there's always going to be a market in being that person to like blame or like help when things fail.
And in terms of the fiat on-ramp, so with Wire, would they conduct KYC proofs for you?
Yeah. So it seems like you have like the DeFi side of things, and then you'll have on-ramps. So like Wire's one, I think there's now a few. And then so like that's going to depend on the jurisdiction. So like you're always going to need to kind of basically have the interface of like someone who is like regulated, and then kind of this unregulated aspect, and then just connecting them.
When you talked about abstraction of gas, did you mean like meta transactions, or just to literally make it really simple to pay gas?
Just meta transactions. Yeah. I think there's now even GDI. There's so many DIs out there. Cool.
Do you need to be regulated because in the States?
So everyone is always regulated no matter what you do. It's just a matter of which regulations, I'd say. So based on like our, I guess, reading of it, like if everything is fully decentralized, then you're just kind of sending messages and you're launching software. But if you do any sort of, so like if I were to, I guess, be the one calculating the advice. So if I do it the smart contract, like 100% smart contract, and the smart contract is rebalancing, and I'm just kind of triggering the smart contract, and everybody can trigger the smart contract, then you're good. But if I'm like sitting somewhere with a computer and then I'm kind of sending in like where the money is going, then you'd fall under like robo-advisor laws or regulations.
So it's a gray area.
No, it's pretty black and white. Like, if you're on this side, you're good. If you're on this side, like, you need to have like RAs and everything buttoned up. Yeah. Cool. So I think that's everything I had. So we are live. If he wants to deposit, please only deposit a DAI or two. Though I think people have been depositing like 1,000 DAI. And then if you see any bugs or something, let me know. Because we're about to start another sprint. And then if you like have any comments, questions, my email is just kingjacob@gmail.com. And then always reachable on Twitter. Cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.